Well,
Hey,
welcome,
there we are.
Ghost Wardens. How are you guys doing this evening? We have an exciting show planned for you. Swap you around. We are going to do a tour of the Central Empire tonight to show you around the map on the expanded Legend of Ghost Mountain setting for Savage Worlds. It is currently on Kickstarter. So if you guys are brand new and haven't gotten on Kickstarter yet, I will throw a link in the comments so you guys can check out the Kickstarter. Thank you to the over 600 Ghost Wardens that are already on board on the campaign. That is super exciting for us to see that much love thrown at this campaign, and super exciting. And the last night we did a little holler unboxing, and if you kind of want to see what a lot of the Legend of Ghost Mountain box set components are going to look like, check that out on our YouTube or Twitch repository.
And there was like a conscious effort to be like, hey, let's kind of try to make these two boxes somewhat, in parity. They're not exactly identical. Ours has got a little bit more, including a dragon, but they give an idea of what we were aiming for.
So yeah, we are super excited to be able to offer the Dragon Mini. And then Donald, you're muted,
Don.
It's not in the box. Simon will have words for you.
That's true.
With the box. Yeah.
With the box.
True. I mean, you can store it in the box if you want, but it's huge. It's 4.5 inches, so you can give it its own shrine.
That's not a promise.
Right? I mean, you could.
That's not a promise. It might not fit in the box.
Right, it probably doesn't. We are going to jam that box full of good stuff. So but also, we would be remiss without wishing Darrell a happy birthday. Happy birthday, sir!
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, it was good. It was a good day. I worked. That's what I do anyway.
So I think we're getting an echo from somebody. I don't know whether it's Don or Darrell. It could be. No, it's not me. I don't have no speakers. But so welcome everybody. We'll actually get into it pretty quickly. So one of the cool things, a bunch of you guys joined us for the Game Changer version of Legend of Ghost Mountain, and one thing that we've definitely expanded upon because of the popular demand for it is grown out what kind of where on the map things happen, what other kind of things besides the plot point campaign you guys can get involved with. So and the map is gorgeous. I think the map. Let me go look up. Make sure I get this correct. Saga Mackenzie is the artist and the cartographer who did our map, and it is gorgeous. And Darrell definitely filled it out with good stuff. So we are going to
just put a bunch of stuff on there.
Just a bunch of stuff. Names and places, whatevs. And so that was definitely something that we did very intentionally to expand out the world into a full setting. So you guys, if you want to sandbox it, there are lots of very cool world building stuff to explore, and we have
more adventure. Everyone wants more adventure.
So here's a brief little video I'll throw up on there so we can kind of zoom around the map and you guys can get an idea what's going on. But after that, we'll open it up to questions too. So you guys can ask our dev team on if you see anything on the map that surprises you or piques your interest, definitely shout it out.
And if you want, we can just start with the West and we can start listing some features and I can tell a little bit about them without giving away too much.
There it is.
I'll give away a lot.
Right? There's Ghost Mountain right there.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's why the West is the most important. Because West is where Ghost Mountain itself exists. And one thing on the map, right? This is not China. We don't pretend it's China. This is not Chinese history or Chinese mythology, but it is clearly inspired by it. And one of those inspirations is this idea of the holy mountains, right? There are 5 kind of holy mountains, important cultural peaks in China, like Kunlun and Wudang, and you've probably heard those names before because there's martial arts systems or monasteries that are built around them. And in Central Empire, Ghost Mountain is one of those 5, and its important thing is it's got the gate to the Underworld in it, and then you've got the Twin Peaks in the center, and somewhere on one of the 2 of them supposedly is the gate to heaven. Spoiler alert, it's not on either one. It's between the 2. So good luck finding it unless you can fly. In the south, you've got Sun Mountain, which is where there used to be more than one sun. They were shot down. That's actually fully a nod to folklore. And the gag is there's a lot of volcanoes in the south, and these are supposed to be where the suns fell. And one particularly bitter sun aimed for the mainland and hit where Sun Mountain is. That's a volcano now. And that actually plays a role in the Ashen Monks and their uprising later.
Oh, very cool, very cool. So yeah, I'll let you guys pick a spot you want to start with and turn over the map to Donald, and we can zoom in and get some. But we do have a good question on the Metal Mountains, and those are northern. Yes, yes.
Yeah, north is the Metal Steppe. It's called, right? So there's sort of elements and colors associated with the 5 directions, and the steppe is not actually metal, but they're the color it's associated with black, and some of the grass up there does grow black, which freaks people out when they go the first time. And it's kind of cold, but yeah, it's more the element metal rather, and there are mines up there and things like that. That's what it's mostly named for.
Nice. Yeah, so Todd,
I think we'll definitely have to bring up something fun in Sanctuary City that might appear in the plot point campaign, and that Landauer has been very excitedly teasing ever since the start of the campaign.
Yeah. Talk about it now. Do it now. As long as we're here.
Oh, so well, in Sanctuary City is interesting because the vast majority of the culture in the north is nomadic. Like they don't really have cities up there. The one exception is this walled city, Sanctuary City, and there's various different tribes that rule the north. They've been conquered by the Central Empire, so they kind of got to play nice, but they raid all the time. But Sanctuary, and they fight with each other as much as they fight with the Central Empire. But Sanctuary City is the one place where you're not allowed to fight. So that's where they meet for their big, group chats, and that's where big decisions are made. That's also where the remnants of the Imperial Army are kind of just like parked there because they know if they leave those walls, they're screwed at this point. But I don't know exactly what Chris is eager about that. Probably a
somebody
gag I'm
who's very vital to the overall plot of Ghost Mountain.
Yeah, don't lose your head over it, or
maybe discovered something about some pieces of an emperor there.
Oh yeah. So the dismembered emperor, which everyone's like, this is one of those little pieces of history that we throw in there that's I think pretty fun, and that leads into kind of like the backstory of the Central Empire itself, right? And the idea was these used to all be separate kingdoms, right? The North would have been an entirely separate, nation. The South, the West, the East, and the Center, they were all their own countries. And hundreds and hundreds of years ago, they're all fighting each other, and there's this big war. And you have this figure, Great Xi, who, like the first emperor, Qin, or like Alexander the Great, actually manages to beat everybody and make this one single political, unified entity. And, so he gets called first emperor in the setting a lot, not to be confused with the actual first emperor of China. But one of the things that always fascinated me about the real first emperor was Gaia was only first emperor for 20 years before he died. And, he spent almost all his whole, all this time, actually making one central empire there, and then has a decade or so to rule it. And then he's dead, and, he's got this insane tomb or whatever. But even in that 20 years, the stuff that he established lasted for, created these ideas that last for dynasties and dynasties after him. And I always thought that was really interesting, how that got set up. And Great G, he has it easy comparatively because he was an immortal before he became the emperor. So he sits on the throne for 200 years rather than 20. So he's got a lot longer to really establish how the Central Empire works, how things are going to happen in the future. But in that 200 years, he gets crazier and more malevolent and more horrible, as you do when you're immortal and all powerful.
As you do.
as you do. And eventually the time comes where people have to do something about it. And he's immortal, so they can't really kill him. So they betray him, they chop him into pieces, and they take the pieces to the 5 different corners of the world. And I think it's his head, his heart, his bones, his hands, and his eyes, I believe, are the 5 parts that have been, split apart to keep him from ever coming back. And Sanctuary City does contain one of those sets of parts.
Best MacGuffin ever. I just love it. The Dismembered Emperor. Oh, it's so good. He's just
of course,
saying it.
He was the savage. Yeah, he was the savage G. So of course, like it's the savage heart, which Big Trouble in Little China fans will be like, oh, Easter egg, But yeah, his savage bones, his savage hand.
I love it. That that's just as far as MacGuffins go. At some point someone's going to have to reconstitute the Emperor. It's just going to have to happen.
I will say it does not happen in this campaign. Yeah. One of the 5 parts features heavily, and there's notes at the end like, okay, there's 4 parts unaccounted for at the end here. If you want to run with that ball, here's some ideas. We do the same thing in Deadlands, with the Reckoners and things like that, where it's like, all right, it's out there. You can kind of do your own thing. We might do something with them later, depending on how the campaign goes, but have fun, right?
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Speaking of Sanctuary City, I've pulled up the by Matthew the actual art of Sanctuary City. One of the things I really like about Sanctuary City is that there's no map in the book of Sanctuary City, because there's no map in the Central Empire, because the city just doesn't stick around the way you expect, right? People are constantly building new stuff, tearing stuff down. Yeah. Oh, there's horse lords here, so now there's 10,000 tents. They're gone. The tents are gone.
Right. Yeah, there's a couple of permanent features, but that's like they're just noted. Like, by the way, there's a citadel here, there's a wall here, there's a bridge here that's important. The rest of it is very mutable,
Yeah, that brings up a great question.
Sorry, I do not discount the importance of bridges. They have some secrets that I don't think we're going to talk about, but there might be some reasons to pay attention to some bridges in various areas.
Some have magical properties, right? So is this the map cartography, or is it more parsed out? So this is like the general, and it's everyone kind of knows where things are that are labeled on this, but this is not to scale, right? Like the features are much larger, like the wall's not really that big, the for an idea of the scale, and the Central Empire is much, much smaller than, say, anything we base the source material on. To ride from Ghost Mountain down to Dead Lake on the map, that's 2 days on horseback. So to give you a kind of idea of the distance that we're talking there, and it's like, no, these things aren't that big, but we've accentuated them so that they're more visible on the map and just look cool, is the idea. And to give you a feeling for the terrain and some of the objects that you might see on the way.
Yeah, I think that's a great kind of compromise between scale and then our role-playing ability, right? It's like, it's a very large sandbox, but it's still, it's approachable enough for game masters to be able to, weave in, travel times and all that kind of stuff. So it's really kind of about like punching up the play.
Yeah, well, especially because the time it takes to get from place to place does matter, because we've got encounters that you pull cards for, just like you would in Deadlands and Lost Colony and things like that. You've got potential encounters along the way that can be generated. So the time from point A to point B matters on that level. It also matters, like we've talked before about, there's kind of a time limit on the campaign. And the inevitable army, which are the bad guys in the main campaign, you can put them on the map. And once you get the Mirror of Ever-Present Sight that shows you where they are, you can spy on them and see, like they say, here's where we're going. And once we get here, we're going to do this. And then we're coming back this other direction. And you can just track them. And you can see day by day where they're going. And they're like, all right, I guess we've got a week to do this part. all right, we've got time for a side quest, or we need to get there before them. Hurry. And like the fun thing is it puts it in the player's hands. They get to choose, right? Like, well, let's rush this, or no, we need to take our time and get a particular magic item, which is an optional get, but it's going to help us later on. Let's do that. Let's take the risk.
So how far afield, kind of over the course of the campaign, are folks going to move around the map? I mean, obviously there's a lot of freedom, but where's the general area that?
In the main campaign, you're going to spend a lot of time around Ghost Mountain, Dead Lake, and then in the mountains around Dead Lake in the first part. Then it moves into the center. You've got to get there. Your route might depend on what's been locked off in the meantime. You'll spend a lot of time in Capital City, and depending on how things go in Capital City, move up into the north to Sanctuary City and deal with some things there. Oh my God.
There's my Amazon return label. My business card.
And then in the Ashen Monk Uprising in the GM screen, that all takes place way down south, down in the Fire Sea, in some of the cities around there.
So while we're in the north,
I'm actually going to
that up, Donald. We do have a good question about the Rend, and the question is from Tentacle Greg, and he asked, the Rend, was that caused when the gate opened?
No, the Rend's completely separate. The campaign's got a lot going on, but the world also has all of these other threads to pick up, right? Like things happened in the Central Empire thousands of years ago, and there's a few things left over from that time. Like the Cloud Road that we go on in the adventure is one of those things. The Great Path from Capital City to the east and the whole East Gate. These are all these massive undertakings that were built long before the Central Empire existed, and they were actually built with necromancy. So there's forced labor that was involved in making them, and part of that forced labor is like your ghost is going to get tied into this object, and they're kind of still lingering around all this time later because of it. And then you've got things like the Rend and the Gorge, and there's an entire underground cavern system that we don't spend a lot of time with, but we mention it can come up in the random encounters and things like that, so that there's more going on than just what we see in the campaign.
So for Dead Lake, since that's one of the places that folks head, is it dead for natural reasons, or is there a supernatural component for why Dead Lake is dead?
Both. So it's a salt lake. There's two rivers that run into it from the mountains. One's called like the Pure River, and one's called the Devil's Tears River. And somewhere under the mountains near Dead Lake, there's a city that's not on the map because it's not on any map, and that's Devil Town, where there's humans are the mainstay of the setting, but there are races available that are kind of monstrous. Bat devils. They're humanoids, but they can fly, and they would drink blood. Bone devils, they kind of look undead even though they're still alive. Ox devils, which are a classic, right? So we can reference the Ox King and things like that. And they're absolute outsiders in the setting, but they are available to play, because that's the whole thing with Ghost Mountain, is they'll take in anyone. So if you want to play a devil, that's on the table. But where they hide kind of is Devil Town under there, and the really salty river that comes into Dead Lake. Legend has it, it's all from the tears of these devils that have to hide away, like down under the mountains. There's also horrible, evil stuff inside the lake that you directly have to fight during the campaign, or ignore and let it kill the whole town. Fair.
Your choice.
Yeah,
right?
your choice. Right. You do have something else to do at the time, so it's meant to be a dilemma, and you do get a benefit for letting the town die. It's like, oh, if we blow this off, we stay on target, and we can actually beat the inevitable army to the West Gate and potentially save that entire fort, which keeps them entirely out of the West.
So you can lead a party to the Dead Lake, but you can't make them drink, and then
do not drink the water. And one of the other fun things in Dead Lake is, because nothing will grow in it, in part just because it's the salt water or whatever, the locals all think it's just bad luck to be, to touch the water. And so game mechanically, it's not. But like the great thing is like if anyone gets splashed with it, like everyone around you is freaking out. Their reaction drops because they're like, "Oh, that's it, bad luck. I don't want it to go with you." Like, don't touch that.
Yeah, there's all this ominous glowing coming from the lake. I wonder what that's about.
Yeah,
I wonder
that's
if people are gonna find out what that's about.
Yeah, that's definitely a supernatural influence. The big green glow in the lake. They say that in moonlight you can see a pagoda. So and one of the things with the West is it didn't used to be this much of a desert. Like right now, the terrain's very much based on the like Danwon and the deserts around that, and it's a really cool, real place. You know that has this great oasis lake in it. But this area didn't used to be this way in the Central Empire. The ruined desert, which is this sand that's been blowing in, like there used to be all this stuff even west of there, and there was a whole other nation that would sometimes invade and they'd have to fight them. But the desert's gotten progressively worse over the centuries, and now no one comes from there anymore. They're like, I don't know if there's anything west of here, like we can't even fathom it. And like Oasis City isn't a real city anymore. It's buried by the sand, but you can go there and search for buried magic items and ghosts and things like that if you can get there. And what makes traveling through the desert so tough is it's got these onyx shards all through it, and they cut feet and horses' feet. So just if you can find a path and stay on a path, it's safe. But if you're just walking through the desert, you just get shredded. So it's very dangerous. You need to know where you're going to explore it. Stay on the path,
So do we hint at like why the onyx is there? Is it there from time immemorial, or is there some other nefarious thing that ruined the desert?
It's so you just know it's getting worse.
Okay.
Like that's a aspect of it. It does have giant sandworms, because who doesn't love giant sandworms?
wait! There's giant sandworms in this?
It does, yeah, absolutely.
Oh. Bless the maker and his water.
Right.
Bless his coming as it is going. Oh, fantastic. I didn't even know there's giant sandworms, guys. Oh, that's great. I love it. Yeah. See, and this is why we're even having this stream, because like you get Darrell talking about it. It's like there's all this great world building. There's
a lot of depth out there, y'all. Like that's kind of what we want to. We're nerding out over it, and hopefully you'll be like, oh yeah, there's stuff here. I'll be able to play, right? yeah. And with the desert exploration, that's the fun part. Is the nice thing about like when you get the Mirror of Ever-Present Sight, like you don't have a good reason to go to Oasis City just on your own. But once you get the mirror, it'll show you like, P.S. here's an item, you're going to be fighting this corrupted dragon. There's a dragon slaying saber in that city. Oh. Probably worth the trip, to go get it. But when do you have time?
Which you might be able to see said dragon slaying sword somewhere on the Ghost Mountain campaign page.
Oh yeah. Yes, we do have an image of that, right?
Right. Good plug to like follow the link. Let's see. Right. If you walk with rhythm, you gotta walk with rhythm.
Well, that's probably who's on the other side of the desert. We don't talk about them anymore.
Right. We didn't buy that license, so we have to call them interesting nomadic desert dwelling fighters.
And the Imperial soldiers in each of the 5 areas, like their job is to fight off invaders from the different directions, right? So like the ones in the north, and they're all color coded for their area. So like in the north, you got the black banners, because that's the the metal step. That's the black area. And they're like almost the toughest guys in there, because the horse lords up there are active, and there's a lot of them, and they're tough. So they're always doing something, right? In the center, you've got the gold banners, and they're the most, like, all the best fighters go there because they're closest to the emperor, and they've got the most money and the most everything. But they're also a little bit soft. Like, their leadership is amazing. Their troops are a little softer because they don't have as much to do. And then you've got the green banners in the east, which they've mostly been rolled up by the Sea Raiders. They're not doing so well. Like, They have to hide in harbors and castles right now, and the Sea Raiders are pretty much roaming as they will over there. South has got the red banners, and then the West has got the white banners. And the white banners are the worst of the worst because the ruined desert has stopped any invaders from coming this way for hundreds of years. So they've just been sitting on their thumbs this whole time. And of course, when the inevitable army starts to have its uprising, it's kind of like, oh man, what are we going to do? Are we going to train these guys? How are we going to get this unit functional in time to do anything? Or are we going to go try and get the gold banners to help? And this is a mild spoiler, but the black banners have come from the north to help against these Sea Raiders, and them getting wiped out is what creates the inevitable army in the first place. So the zombie army is pretty tough.
That's funny because I was about to say I had heard a rumor that General Hung had led the Black Banners south, but then you gave away the plot.
Right. Well, and this is also like a super classic trope for anyone that knows not only like the wuxia fantasy part of it, but just the real history too. Is like this notion of people coming south through the wall, of opening the gates and letting them in. Like it's this huge trope that happens over and over and over again because it's changed history one major time, and you can make the case a couple others too, right? So of course, not only does it happen like before the campaign even starts, but if things go badly with the Emperor, you can go north and be like, all right, this didn't work out with the Emperor. There's a Horse Lord army up here. All I got to do is open the gates, and I got some friends, because the Horse Lords, they're feisty, but they do believe in Ghost Mountain, right? Like they're with it. Like they're like, no one wants to get taken. You want zombies? This is how you get zombies.
This is how you get zombies.
Right? We're with you. You just got to open the gate.
Well, and all, I mean, obviously, like, inspired by history, but not so direct that you're bound by any of it. But like, there's some great parallels to history, like the Xiongnu or the Mongols. Like sometimes you let them in to help out, and they're like, well, as long as we're here, maybe we'll just run the place.
Well, I mean, and that's so like one of my favorite, story settings in the genre is, of course, like the Qingming Rebellion, right? Where you've got the Qing have come in from the north, and kind of everyone, like all the Han Chinese in the middle, are like, yeah, well, I don't like that they're in charge. These are foreigners, running our stuff, and they don't necessarily like it. But the Ming Empire that they displaced was pretty awful by the time that it happened. So like, there's this kind of like balance between, it's like, but they're kind of running things okay. Like, I'm not sure, but in almost all of the wuxia stories, it's about the Red Lotus Society, who are the Ming rebels trying to get rid of these awful invaders, with the one exception being like my favorite of all time, which is Jin Yong's Deer in the Cauldron, which the character in that essentially is working for the Qing, and he's the worst hero ever, but he's awesome. And he kind of makes the case for like, well, they're not as bad as it could be. We'll just live with it. And that's your decision. Like, that's something I want to reference in the game, right? You've got that decision too. Like, all right, can we do better, or are these guys the best that we've got? With the Central Empire itself. Like, this is a family that betrayed the original emperor and cut him to pieces. Should they really be running things anymore? But they're better than a zombie army. So,
I mean, that's a pretty low bar, right?
Yeah.
Like,
do we get Banner Army champions? Yeah. Do we get Banner Army champions? Absolutely. 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 It's a staple of the genre that the way you become general is you can kick the butt of any soldier in your army, usually 10 to 100 at a time. That is absolutely true here. We have multiple named wildcard generals who you might be able to sway onto your side, who you might have to fight to the death. And the great thing about the ghosts and undead in this is, if you do fight someone to the death and have to kill them, they can still be in the campaign. They'll come back to haunt you, literally. So we get a lot of mileage out of our villains.
Oh, that's so good. That's
well,
so
and
good.
On the same track, the inevitable army might also have a couple of its own champions
They
that
do.
it is drawn
right?
from some unlucky banners.
Yeah. Right. And some of them were friends of Ghost Mountain before this happened. And the one of the notions of the game is that General Hung, who is the general in charge of this, he was the best of the best. Right? Like he's the one that everyone admits, like, that guy was awesome. He's the best general that we had. He was loyal. He was sturdy. He died badly, and he's upset about it, and he's taking it out on the whole country. What are you going to do about it?
So here's an interesting question: could we play something like Journey of the West in the setting?
So, sort of. Like, I mean, I've read it multiple times. This is a lot of there are things that reference a lot of things from Journey of the West. Like if you know what you're looking for, especially like some of the river crossings and things like that, it's like, yes, like the tools that we're using are the same tools that built the wuxia genre as we know it. Journey to the West is one of the classics that built it. Bandits of the Marsh, one of the classics that built it. Romance of the Three Kingdoms, one of the classics. All like those elements you'll find peppered out here because you can't get away from them, like, and still be, following the genre.
So Shane mentioned last night that Kung Fu Panda was a big inspiration for his initial idea.
Yeah.
The any Avatar inspiration? We've got Is There War in Ba Sing Se?
Yeah. Well, so again, Avatar pulls from these exact same sort. We're all drinking from the same well here, right? So you don't have to you don't have to walk very far to make things work in different ways. Like, we have a few elemental sorceries, but we don't do the same element. Like, we do have a fire sorceress, but it's not commonplace, right? It's not commonplace like Avatar. But the nice thing about Savage Worlds is we've got Fantasy Companion. We know how powers work. It's not super hard to just be like, by the way, hey, what do you know? Here's 4 elements plus the half element. They pushed into the Chinese version of 5 elements. Theirs are slightly different, like added metal. Hey, but we're still missing wood. Damn. But it's not that hard to just be like, 15 power points. Here's your trappings. Go, no problem. Like, it's all there.
Yeah, super versatile. So as long as we're on big armies and on mechanics, there's a great question from Pentacle Greg said, how does mass battle play into resolving the plot point? And in general, too, the other kind of...
It is. And so, like, we try to stress that it is optional, but I think it's the better option, right? Like, I think one of the big strengths of Savage Worlds is you've got these subsystems that you can ignore safely 90% of the time. But once you start using them, you find out, like, oh, wait, this is pretty fun, and it really opens up some of the things that we can do that would be extremely hard to do in other game systems, right? Like a satisfying, like, all right, we've got 10,000 guys on the field here. How do we do this and still make the heroes feel like they're part of this and like their decisions matter other than, well, we'll fight a skirmish and that's going to determine it, right? And we try to build up and layer. So, like, if you do end up fighting around Dead Lake, like the first battle, you're going to get your feet wet. You're going to learn a little bit, like, oh, mass battles, it's a thing. We're okay here. Like, we can do this. And then you can escalate if you're starting to fight elsewhere. And you can let it go. But if you do, the empire falls, right? The army's going to take over, like, at the end. You need some kind of distraction to be able to go after the root cause of this. And a lot of people might die if you can't fight that battle. And meanwhile, you're building up your troops, you're recruiting, you're getting more of them, you're improving their qualities. And that's all stuff. There's no new rules for that here. This is all just straight out of Suede because it handles it. It's got it. It's there.
And I've been saying since I think every single live stream we've done for this, I've said the same thing, right? That Ghost Mountain is my favorite. The plot point campaign is my favorite type of campaign, where you're getting all of the team together, and in this case, because it's Wuxia, that also means that you get their armies to come along with them, right? And it was such a it keeps coming up because there's so many opportunities for these mass battles that the mass battle playmat was one of, I think, maybe the first thing I pitched when we were like, oh, what kind of stretch goals do we want to do? What kind of things would be cool to really plus up the box?
And that's been unlocked, right? So
it is. It's in the box.
I think so.
It's in the box, everybody.
Yeah.
Like,
so if you get the box level in print or go in for the digital all-in, you get the mass battle playmat.
Yeah, we tried to not have like any add-ons that you'd be like, oh, I missed that. If you get the box, like you got it, like you're good. Yeah. And the other thing,
the only thing you need to worry about is the Dragon Mini.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, there's no worrying about that. Anyone who's got the box is going to get the mini. So that we unlocked that one from the get-go. So that's super cool. I don't know. Let's see. Did I do a little video of the mini? So yeah, just in case that people haven't seen the mini, this is the cool mini.
Yeah, and Vitric, I agree. I love the mass battles the way they work because A, like the stuff that you do matters, but B, even if you're tactically not that great, like if you don't recruit a good leader or become a good leader on your own, you can still change the course of the battle because you're a great fighter. You're like, all right, I'm going out into the field and I'm doing my thing, and it's dangerous and you can get wounded, but one hero can turn the tide of battle, and that's so genre appropriate. Like that's absolutely how it should be.
So Donald, why don't you pick an area on the map and we can start talking about your choice?
Well, so I was going to say, Darrell, speaking of heroes in the game and the people all from around attacking the Central Empire itself, can't you tell us about, I think one of the archetypes is not necessarily from the Central Empire, but these outlying surrounding areas, correct?
Yeah, well, so Keep Away Lin is an invader himself, right? It's one of the things we try to do is like, we don't judge, right? Like the citizens of the Central Empire, they judge. Like invaders are barbarians, they're evil, they're horrible. Forget them, forget devils and all that. But like one of the aspects is Ghost Mountain will take anyone. And so you've kind of got these raiders from the sea. They come in and they just trash everything and they want to own the place. And like, there's some historical precedent for them too. Like we're not going to go too deep into that, but it's pretty obvious if you know, right? But they're not innately evil. And the whole idea is their kingdom is currently being run by an immortal emperor who was a peer of the dismembered emperor. So, but he's still in charge of his nation, right? And he's sending his guys over, like, well, I mean, essentially, my brother had this empire. He's dead. So I guess it's mine now. And then, so you've got these armies that have come in, and most of the East is just owned by them, right? The East Gate has fallen. Some of the troops are just kind of stuck, locked into the cities, and the invaders have moved out around them. And fighting them is the whole reason that Hong took his armies down south, because this wasn't getting taken care of. And he's like, well, I've got the skills, I've got the army. Let's do this, right? And it goes badly, because the problem with being too good is you become a threat to the powers that be. And there's a lot of corruption inside the Central Empire. And when you decide whether you're going to save it or not, you've got to how do we deal with this corruption? Can we find out who's the bad guy here and get rid of them? Or do we live with it? Like all choices that you've got.
Nice. One question
to jump.
Okay.
Oh, go with the question first.
If the cloth map is unlocked, we still got a paper map as well. So I think the cloth map replaces the paper map.
It replaces.
So
yes,
you won't have to deal with those pesky fold lines or any of that. So I think we're not going to do paper if we get the cloth one all worked out. So please unlock the cloth map because that'd be really cool.
It is unlocked. Yeah, that's great.
Oh wait, is it? I thought that was.
It is. We hit 60. Boom.
Oh.
Whoa. Oh no, I'm sorry.
No,
the
that's 80.
80.
No.
We haven't unlocked it. I'm sorry. My bad.
Yeah, the two that are we've announced the remaining are the cloth map and then the conviction coin. So.
That's right. We've unlocked all the stuff that's worked for me. Now we need to make work for Simon.
Yeah. But you can back now and push us closer to 80 and unlock that cloth map, which is going to be really cool.
I do want it.
And we aren't that far away. I think we're at 65K on the thing, and that's at 80, so it's the next one.
So I saw somebody name drop 50 fathoms, which is definitely an inspiration of mine. I think it's the best campaign I've ever run. I'm not going to pretend that this is as good, right? Because that's, to me, like an extraordinarily high bar. But that's what I'm aiming for, y'all. And, and that comes from Shane. So that gets it closer.
Yeah, 50
So
damage.
I would like to jump in. So I noticed. So again, right, we've done a lot to expand Ghost Mountain into a full-fledged setting, and I'd like to take us to this little place called Drowning City, because there is to illustrate how much stuff we have added. There's whole pieces of art that. So I did all the art orders with Darrell in the initial run, and now there's art like this that I have no idea what's going on here. I don't know what these creatures are. I see that we've got Flying Fox Tan trying to desperately save herself from these monsters. What the hell is going on?
Yeah, right. Well, so when we go down south for Ashen Monk Uprising, Drowning City is one of the places that I wanted to go to. It's actually, so there are places. It's really more based on Venice than anything else, just because Venice is like slowly sinking into the water, and I've always been fascinated by that, like as a place. But there are cities with similar characteristics in Asia, so I was like, okay, like I got to have something like this. And in Drowning City, it's one of these southern stone cities, but there is a magical force that is pulling the city down. Like it's not just built on a bad location. It's, oh no, this used to be stable and it is sinking. We'll just keep building up as we go. And the Ghost Wardens are going to come face to face with that and potentially have a chance to do something about it.
Oh, that's so cool.
Is it too much of a spoiler to say what these creatures are?
Okay, so when I talked about devils, right, those are fish devils. And there's a bunch of different kinds. Most of them, like I say, most of the devils, they're just people, right? They're weird looking people, but they're people. There's a few types that are more bestial, and the fish devils are like that. They're more like piranha men. They're more, nasty, flesh eating, and they've been swarming around the Drowning City as part of why it's getting pulled down. And if you get too close to the water, they might like pop up and grab you and pull you down under the surface and eat you. So people disappear there all the time. So that's what Flying Fox is dealing with. Yeah.
Unlike Dead Lake, where it's just bad luck. No, the water here in Drowning City is dangerous.
Yeah. No, the water itself is fine. It's all the stuff in it you got to watch out for. Yeah.
So here's the one. Venkalas, any places similar to the 36th chamber of Shaolin?
So the Ashen Monks are not Shaolin, but they fill a lot of the same role, right? They definitely they're based in the south. They're based around Sun Mountain. And there's this notion, right, which would be familiar to fans of wuxia, but if you're new to it, we've got what are called the Valiant Societies, and those are the martial societies, martial arts schools, the escort agencies, things like fighters. They belong to essentially a different world from the military and the bureaucracy. And they have their own rules that they follow. And basically one of those rules is don't mess with that other world, the soldiers and the bureaucracy and all that. We can do justice in a small town. It gets tough when that justice involves fighting a corrupt judge or something like that. Their code might demand it. As long as it's one-on-one, that's okay. The second it becomes a group where you might bring the entire army down on you, that's a problem. And the Ashen Monks, they're that one of those martial orders that back when Great Xi was taking over the South said, well, we've got to fight for our homeland. And all the other Valiant Society was like, whoa. Like, that's kind of outside our jurisdiction, man. Like, we're not allowed to do that. They did it anyway, and Great Xi burnt their temple to the ground. Burned temples are a thing, like in wuxia, genre. So if you're looking for that kind of space, the Ashen Monks are absolutely where you would find it. And one of their cool things is they've got and this is a item that you can buy as equipment, is you've got temple ash, where if you put this ash on you, you can become fireproof because it's kind of blessed from the burnt Sun Mountain temple. Which means they're a pain to fight for the fire hands, because she's like, oh man, an entire faction of fireproof guys? What's this?
We got some fans who are doing some deep cuts here. So
that's great, right? Like right? That's the open invitation. Like in many ways, like we're gonna put this stuff out there, and it's your world. Run with it, right? Like there's only so much detail we can pack in. When we zoom in on an area, we zoom in on it. We can't zoom in on the whole empire. We can give you the pieces. If you recognize it, awesome. And if you don't, man, do your own thing. Like it's great. You know?
Yeah. So this one from Venkel, I mean, this goes back to what, the 1980s something movie.
Well, there was a remake too. Yep, Choi Hark, who's one of the masters. You know, yeah. So
like the Shushan Knight Errant books and all. Yeah.
Zoom Mountain would be like the Music Mountain in the east. The Singing Mountain, it's called, is the closest to Zoo. Like they've got the more magical stuff, and there's a school of sorcery that comes, just like all the Mystic Mountains have their own martial schools that come from them, and theirs have the music school that use, you know, stringed instruments or something. You know, like you'd see people. I've seen people ask about like Kung Fu Hustle, and it's like, okay, Kung Fu Hustle is brilliant, and it is absolutely, again, we're drinking from the same well. One of my favorite things was seeing, you know, Stephen Chow talking about Jin Yong watching the premiere of Kung Fu Hustle, because there's so much in that movie that is both absolutely awesome wuxia and also absolutely a parody of Jin Yong's wuxia, like the styles in use and the things that are happening, like totally like, oh, I know where that's from. Like that's so Condor Heroes or whatever. So we're all coming from that same source. And so, yeah, we've got the music magic where you can pull the string hard and it'll create a barrier, or string it like that and it'll shoot bolts. You know, Savage Worlds.
Nice. I mean, yeah. So my for everyone watching, it is so clear that Darrell knows his stuff and is not only a fan of the genre but also a scholar of it. So that is really, really cool.
Ash monks are the focus of the GM adventure, you know, or rather, one of the show. There are multiple survivors of that original incident, and they've all kind of got their own different takes on it. So the antagonist, if you will, on the adventure is that guy, but that still leaves 2 other monks and 2 other nuns who might be great, you know. So
nice. So let's see, Darrell, dealer's choice. What other little section of the map do we want to zoom in on for a minute and kind of explore?
Well, we could talk about Stonewheel, which is sort of, that's in the center, right next to Capital City, and it's one of the places where the Valiant Societies meet. Like it's named after this like weird, like oversized stone wheel in the center of it, which like if it was a wheel for something is like had to be like this ridiculously huge juggernaut. Like, but instead it's basically just a platform where you fight for martial arts contests. And one of the reasons to go there is because when the main adventure is going on, the Valiant Societies, who again are not supposed to get involved in politics, are coming together, trying to decide, you know, like what they won't fight the army, but they will fight like cults, like anyone that's kind of going off range in their own society. And they're trying to decide if the inevitable army counts as that, like if it's fair play for them to join this conflict. And they're going to elect a leader that's going to lead all of these different schools and clans against the battle. And one of the side quests that you can do is you can go to Stonewheel and you've got to fight in the tournament, hoping to either win yourself so that you can lead the Valiant Societies as part of your troops, or at least make sure someone friendly that you can persuade gets in there because there's some different personalities, there's some different masters there, and they're tough. They're not easy.
I love it.
One-on-one.
It wouldn't be a pay-on to the genre without a tournament. I mean,
exactly. It's a staple. You got to have a tournament, with big stakes.
So one question, and we'll get another map up here queued for Donald's next choice. Let me see, where was that comment? So we, in one of the pieces of art, I think I put it on Facebook, we did show some anthropomorphic, interesting character art. I think there was like a fox, kind of a fox-headed. So Kung Fu Roos or any other kind of animal? I mean, like, obviously Kung Fu Panda was an inspiration, but it's not super animal focused. But what is up with that art?
So when we talk about the devils, right? So like dog devils are one of the things. They're kind of like the most common and most looked down on type of devil. There's not at this time a kangaroo devil. However, we've all got swayed and it's got race creation. And we do say, like, P.S., you can make your own kind of devil. Like, we're covering like the ones that are most commonly seen in the genre, but there's a lot of variations here. Like the one I didn't mention is the serpent devil. And they're different because they're the one kind of devil that's not looked down on. They're lucky because the folklore well that we're drawing from, Nuwa, she's the one that created and or saved humanity as a whole. So anyone descended from a serpent woman, probably a good thing. So they get a pass where the other devils don't, But you can kind of do your own thing with it. Like if you can convince your game master, like, yes, a Rue Devil totally fits here. Okay, knock yourself out. You know how to build them.
Awesome. Okay, so for final few minutes, I'm going to take my choice. Let's see what you guys can tell us about Capital City. What's it seems like a whole bunch of cool stuff can be going on there. The game masters can really kind of flesh it out. So give us a hint of what's going on.
Formerly Crater City, because a meteor hit there at some point, but that's also where Great G built his capital. And the craters form kind of a natural wall around it, and they've built that up even further. So, like, it's part city, part fortress, and there's a lot going on in there. You've got a lot of artifacts. You've got the main temples, the Forbidden Palace itself. You've got rows and rows of marketplaces, of fighting schools, and also all of the judges and all of the ministers who are in charge of the bureaucrats in charge of these different areas across the empire. And in the political phase of the campaign, there's a lot of murder and mayhem going on, and you've got a chance as you're navigating through it to either make friends and influence these ministers to bring them onto your side, or de-emphasize their influence, like cut them off at the knees and be like, aha, you're working with the Sharp Axe gang, the thugs that are overrunning like the low town, and have been spreading like a plague everywhere. Discredit him, and now he won't be able to speak against you when it comes time to prove your case to the emperor. Because it's an argument. The emperor has created an equivalent rival group of wardens, the Imperial Wardens, where the Ghost Wardens work for the kings of the Underworld. These guys have similar powers, but they work for the emperor directly. And you got to convince him that this is a terrible idea, or run for your life for the North.
I just love how, like, this is, kind of some interesting inspirational real world parallels with like Mexico City, which is built in a crater with a lake and, has ancient kind of fault lines and all that kind of stuff. That's super cool.
Well, let's just say we did go a little outside of Asia for inspiration, right? But if it's cool and had something to latch onto for fantasy and adventure, absolutely. I'm not going to say no to anything.
Right. And again, that's part of that awesome access of freedom you have of, drawing inspiration from where you can find it, but also having the freedom to keep this as fantasy and diverge and And yeah, that was one of the things. Like I've always had that it's a tough thing as a game developer when you really love a story that is historically based. Well, you want to give players and game masters the freedom to not have the outcomes the same as in history. And if it's so obvious, sometimes it just happens that way anyways. That's not nearly as interesting as being able to have the freedom of like, which sides you get, in your army here, who's your friends, who's your foes, what the roles matter, and both, on the table with the dice and kind of the politics. And I think that's kind of the interesting thing about, like you guys were talking earlier on. Yeah, there is mass battle and big kind of political movers and shakers, and it will change how the outcomes depending on what cities you go to,
and you're at the center of it, right? Like you get to choose, and you can fail, and that's half the fun, right? It's like, oh, we failed. What does that mean? What does the campaign look like if we do? And we've got some notes for that. Like, yep, that can happen. There's still a game here.
Nice. The Venko has a question. Magistrates about like
yes. Yep, the ministers. Every area's got like to simplify. Like there's a greater and a lesser minister from each of the different areas, and then there's also they've got their bureaucracy under them, but we kind of ignore them. So you only have to focus on 2 guys, and then judges. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so here's a cool question from John Doom. So not a big spoiler, but you kind of start the campaign as a ghost warden with a gate to the underworld, right? And so are there multiple hells or variants or?
I mean, the joke in the Chinese have got a lot of hells, and that's absolutely true, right? Like ours are based. They're like the ones that we directly talk about are ones that are mentioned in some of the traditional texts. In like, there's a great like museum that it's a walkthrough that they've got like statues and stuff for. And yeah, they're drawn from the folklore in that way, but there's also reference to there's more, right? Like these are the ones that we're seeing. There's more out there, and boy, we could talk about the hells like a lot because there's a lot of stuff going on there. And of course, as ghost wardens, by the end of the campaign, you got to go, right? Like you went in Chinese ghost story, you got to go here too, right? Like go to hell and find the missing pieces to the puzzle there, which also means anyone that you killed along the way can reappear yet again because they'll be in hell in one of these places waiting for you. And the important thing to note is like hell's not evil. Like the underworld, there's all this punishment happening here, but it's based around removing your sins so that you can move on. So it's like, yeah, it sucks to be there. However, it's a necessary step, to proceed. It's not just punishment for punishment's sake. And that's why the underworld kings that you're working for, they're not evil. They're not bad guys. Like they're lords of order, right? They're like, nope, we want to help people and this is how it's done, but they can be extremely myopic. So when you get into a situation, which you do, where it's like, we've got to break the rules to maybe make this happen, that's where you can come face to face with them.
Yeah,
and live out the fantasy of getting to punch your boss because they're also your boss. Don't forget.
Good thing Shane's on vacation. And so one last deep cut, Warriors of Virtue, man.
Sure.
90s. Tank Girl in the desert.
Yeah, they're talking about the Kung Fu ruse. Right, yeah. Like, warriors come out and play. Yeah, I saw it back in the day. Dennis Dunn has his cameo in it. Yeah, great.
Yeah. So, folks, that's our hour. We thank you for joining us. And hopefully, we've shown you guys that this is a big, new, expansive setting. And you showed us a lot of love so far. So if you continue to share on social media, get your friends involved, let your game groups know. For all the new interest in other game systems besides one of the big ones in the room that has been happening recently. We did sell out of our Suede books. But if you order in the campaign and you're new, your Suede book will come with your delivery with Ghost Mountain. But this is a great way to get into Savage Worlds. And if you don't want to wait, Holler is shipping now. Holler is a very kind of similar, there's a lot of stuff in the box. It's a great way to kind of play games that aren't really available in the space. Obviously Wuxia has been a little more covered than
and there's some great, there's some great games like that out there. And I think that the difference between Holler and this and Deadlands really shows what Deadlands can do, and it's not forced, right? Like it still feels very natural.
Right, and there's a lot more here now. I
Woo,
mean,
someone
I
out
think,
there from Rincon, hey.
yeah. And John Doom, we love John Doom. John Doom's like at every stream. If there's a stream without John, we've ever had one, it'll be a sad day when John can't.
We'd be doomed.
But no, it was a very good, awesome birthday present for you guys to get us as far as we have in the campaign so far. So I think we're about 15K from opening up the next one, which is those cloth maps, which would be awesome. And then if we ever get to 100, we got plenty of time left. So do share the campaign, folks. This is kind of the finished thought was this is a great way of being able to get into Savage Worlds. You've got a plot point campaign that is expansive. So if you're nervous about running, a lot of the hand holding has been done with the plot point campaign. These are different than Adventure Pass or modules for most other publishers. What plot point campaigns do is they give you several kind of touchstone adventures that can be run as written, and then a lot of freedom between those to allow your group to explore, do sandbox, navigate through them kind of how they want, which is kind of one of the advantages of Savage Worlds. It's not relying upon monster ratings and specific levels, and since we don't have to do that, we give you some freedom on kind of how to weave your way through plots, and also give your characters a lot of freedom. And if you want to go for the throat, you can just be like, all right, plot point 1, we do this, and then when we're done, all right, some stuff happens, you get there, here's plot point 2, and you just move straight into it. And then there's the Savage Tales where you can be like, and this week there's a Savage Tale that happens in between those, and we'll do that instead because I read that one and I liked it. Bam. So help us unlock the rest of those goodies, the awesome upgrades that are planned for the last 2 stated stretch goals. So share with your friends. This one's a really easy one to get into. Like we haven't done a wuxia setting this big before, wuxia inspired.
Inspired.
Right? and it's different. It's unique. I mean, the whole strong emotion being the driver of powers is just kind of a really kind of unique and fun way to explore that genre that isn't super similar to a lot of what's already been done. And obviously Darrell's got a super passion for it.
And you guys, please do ask questions on the Kickstarter. We'll answer them, or we'll do one of these around them, or what are you interested in? And we'll definitely try to go in on it. I've already seen a couple are like, oh boy, I should have talked about that already. Okay.
Right. So we'll have more with Donald and Darrell as the campaign continues. But do share, folks. And I think for the rest of tonight, Feng Shui. Love Feng Shui.
Like I say, there's a million really good ones out there. I've got them all, or at least a large percentage of them. I think there might be a few indies that I'm missing, but
I think the best part is that no one stumped Darrell so far on all the really deep cuts. There was some.
It can be done, right? Tonight. Like the second you say that, it'll happen. But I've been around, right? Like I've been soaking in it since 1990. So
that is absolutely the truth. And so if you haven't seen our awesome video by Shep, I think we'll close tonight by just showing the Kickstarter video. But the link was in the chat for the Kickstarter. We've got. Let me see. Does it tell us? I need to let me share the video first to get up there, get it ready. Hopefully it doesn't autoplay. We'll pause it and then let me go check Kickstarter and how many days we got. We got 22 days, so 3 weeks left. We're gonna end on a Friday, and so 3 weeks and a day left to share it with your friends. It is a Kickstarter project we love, so Kickstarter has shown us some love, and so you guys, we appreciate the love you've shown as well. We're almost at 63K. And the next awesome stretch goal that is available is the cloth map upgrade. We're going for a faux silk. If we can get that done, that would be a really cool one, and very thematic. And then at 100K, if we get there, the Ghost Mountain box set will include some really cool conviction tokens for the election.
So I can win mine at Tim
Asterisk again. Asterisk again. It's not in the box set, but anybody who acts at the box set tier gets a set for free.
Yes. I almost did this myself with Holler, where I'm like, okay, I got all this stuff, and I'm about to throw the box out, and the coins are there. I'm like, oh, right. They're on the outside. Yeah, right.
I did that last night with the awesome looking conviction tokens. Like, oh, I don't see them, and it turns out they are in the box for Studio 2. Yeah. So if you guys want to get into Savage Worlds and want to play like next week, go check out Holler. If you go to peginc.com/campaign/holler, or just click on Game Changer, and then Holler's got its little card. you guys can get that Holler box set, which is this beast. Oh my god, it is so heavy and awesome. But yes, this is available for retail and for order at Picking.com right now. Not a Wuxia setting, but also kind of one of the exemplars of Savage Worlds. Does a whole lot, and we can do
things that we can
horror.
do.
So,
and Tim Worley just did brilliant work on it. Brilliant work on it.
Yeah. So we will let you guys actually go, and so enjoy the awesome video from Cheyenne, and we will see you guys on stream soon. So cheers, folks.